Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Rashida Dow, a channel about moving abroad and taking career breaks. That's what I talk about here. Hello to everyone watching right now live. If you're watching this on the replay, hello, hello, hello to you. First, I want to welcome all of the members of my YouTube membership who are here right now. Some familiar names and some newer names. Hi, Mrs. Robinson. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Aileen. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Um, Today, we're talking about the mindset you need in order to move abroad. Sorry, I'm lotioning because every video I start off ashy. I don't know why, but I do. So today we're talking about the things you need to kind of keep an eye on, plan for, keep in your brain for your move abroad. So excited to be here with you guys. I'm coming to you from sunny right now, London. It rained for like maybe 30 minutes this morning when I was getting my hair cut. More on that later. Um, but yeah, so it's been much nicer weather than when I was here last April. Very excited to be here doing the things. If you don't know, if you're watching this, you don't know, I live in Mexico City and I've lived there for 5 years, 6 years, pre-pandemic. And I'm not there right now, but I'll be back there in about 2 weeks. And I love living abroad. I love living outside of the US. For me, I feel like moving outside of the US opens up so many more possibilities for your life that don't seem achievable or possible within the US. I don't exactly know how to explain it better than that. It's just a feeling, right? And other people who've moved abroad, a lot of them are in the comments right now, are feel the same way. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is like what you need to be thinking about when you're planning for your move and whatever things that can come up that can kind of knock you off a little bit. So this came up because yesterday was group coaching in my program from Burnout to Bliss, which helps women take career breaks and move abroad. And we talked a little bit about mindset, and I thought there was a bigger discussion that we could have today. So hey, we're gonna do it. I've got a couple bullet points, which means I'll have my phone, making sure I don't lose my notes. The hotel Wi-Fi said maybe not. Let's get that. All right. So if you have moved abroad, because I see some people who do currently live abroad, let us know in the comments, whether you're live or you're watching the replay. Let us know where you are, where you have moved to. And if this is a stop for you for a while, or if you're thinking about moving somewhere else, where are you moving to? Give us the deets, the down and dirty in the comments. I will be in Mexico City for the foreseeable future. I will also not physically be in Mexico City for the foreseeable future because this is just a big year of travel for me. All right. And the first thing I want to talk about as far as mindset goes is setting your expectations. This is a big one. And it's a big one because people often, how do I want to explain this? They often create an idea in their mind of what their experience is going to be without actually recognizing the reality of what they're dealing with, right? And so a lot of times I see people who are disappointed by their experience, and a lot of that disappointment comes from not setting the expectation correctly. Give me 1 second. I'm having a minor issue on my computadora. So what does that typically look like? Hey, Auntie Marilyn. What that typically looks like is someone has created an idea in their head of what their life is going to look like after their move. And they've kind of built it up in a way that the place they're moving to won't ever be able to meet that. Whether it's because there are shortcomings in where they're moving to, or a variety of other reasons. Sorry, there's a lot going on over here, y'all. Why is there so much going on over here? So how this came up recently, I saw a woman who moved to an area because it was known as the blackest area, black people, the blackest area in Mexico. And she's not wrong about that. But there seemed to be an expectation on her end that because she was moving to the blackest area, she would be surrounded by Black people. Expectation did not match reality in the sense that, like, the blackest area in Mexico is still not going to be very diverse. It is going to look a lot lighter than you might expect, right? Like the blackest town in Mexico is never going to be as Black as an average city in the US. And so hearing the blackest city and wanting to go there without realizing that and she did talk about this in her post, her expectations were that, like, she would feel like she was amongst her people. It would feel comfortable. And the other half of that is that, like, when they say Black, they mean Afro-Mexican, and you're not Afro-Mexican. So you're not those aren't, like, they might be your people if you stay here and build community for a while, but immediately in your move, those are not they don't know you. Those are strangers. You are a stranger to them, right? Even if you are Black. I hate to say this, but it's true around the world. You're not the same type of Black, right? Like, Afro-Mexican is a very, very specific thing, right? Thing in the cultural sense, right? African American and Afro-Mexican are not the same thing. And so attempting to be in a place and think that you're going to be comfortable there just because there are people who share the same skin color as you is an expectation that she set for herself that could not be met by where she was going to, right? So I want to make sure that when you're setting expectations for where you go, you're setting expectations that are realistic based on what is available in the place you're going to be, right? If you want to move to somewhere because it is Black, I'm speaking to Black folks here, specifically Black women. If you want to move somewhere that has Black people, it's possible, right? Like, there are 54 countries in Africa right there for you. Pero, like, when you go over there, there's a difference between I'm amongst people who look like me and I'm amongst people who treat me like I'm one of them, right? I'm moving somewhere and people are going to treat me like I am one of them is an expectation that I don't want any of you to have, no matter where you're going. Please. Like, that wasn't even on the list, but now that I've said it, let's talk about it. Take that one off. Right? You can build community. Yes, you can be accepted by people, but the locals are going to treat me like I'm one of them, no matter where you move to. I want you to take that away as an expectation. It might be, maybe you'll get it, and it's a good bonus in the future, right? But it should not be an expectation you have from the start of your move, because that's very, very hard to get, right? Oh, yeah. And Adelia coming through with the good points. Getting treated like one of them ain't always a good thing either. That's a different topic for a different day. There's a lot there, but yeah, you have to remember that you are coming into a place where you are not of the place, you are not of the culture, and they may not consider you of the people, right? And so knowing that you're different, and that's okay, is important. It's an important thing to keep in your head as you get your move going. All right, are we on board? Okay, Aileen says that to me. I have an idea in my head of how I move abroad to look, but I also have some wiggle room based on where I end up. The wiggle room is important. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So I want you to set realistic expectations, right? I'm going to move, and from jump, there I'm going to be treated like family. It's not a realistic expectation of a move to another country. Or another expectation that I hear from people, I've heard in the past, is I'm going to move to a place where there won't be any US influences. Y'all, we out here colonizing everybody between like politically or economically, right? Like you're not going to move to a place that doesn't have a Starbucks or McDonald's and have any kind of conveniences that most people moving abroad want. So set expectations that are realistic. Setting those expectations helps if you've actually been to the place. I'm not saying you should not move without doing a scouting trip. I think it's possible to move without doing a scouting trip. But if you're going to move without doing a scouting trip, you gotta just hop in the boat and let the river take you where it's gonna take you, right? We're not swimming upstream, we're floating with the river. I've seen more and more posts from people online where I can tell, oh, you've never been here before. You moved there, but you never, from the way you wrote that, you had never been there before you moved. And you hadn't done any research. Also, it's okay, but the way they're talking about things lets me know that they have certain expectations for the place they were going. And they're not meeting them, right? Dr. O points out, you can't even expect to be one of the gang, even moving to another state. No, you're not from here. So a long time ago, after my second year, one of the law school years, girl, I do not remember. I interviewed at this law firm in Dallas. I was interviewed by George Bush's grandson, George. Man, that was a good looking man. Anyhow, one of the brown grad babies, if you remember Barbara saying that, one of the Browns. Anyhow, I'm at this law firm, and it was me. I went to lunch with George, and another person at the firm, and you could tell that they didn't. The other guy didn't like him. I don't know why. There was something going on. I think like George was too junior to be interviewing me, and the guy like said it in front of me. It was just this weird thing, like there was tension. But also I could tell from the conversations between the two of them that like in Dallas, like someone might ask me like what elementary school I went to, and it would be important, right? Like I was in that lunch back and forth, like, oh, I'm never gonna be like, if this is the beef they have, right? I'm never going to fit in here, ever. Because I've never been here before in my life, right? And y'all are talking about things from like 20 years ago and it having some kind of intrinsic value. You have to know like what the barrier to entry is. In Dallas, it felt like who you were today may be important, but who you were 20 years ago was also important, right? Like who you knew, what schools you went to, all of those things. And I was like, I can't play in those waters. Like, what are we talking about? And that's kind of what you need to expect when you move to another country. Not that people won't be accepting, but that like there are some places that are going to be easier to break into than others. Some communities are going to be kind of insular, right? They don't know you. They do not know you. And for some reason or another, they may not trust strangers. And them trusting strangers has nothing to do with you, but you're going to get the brunt of it in your day to day because you're a stranger they're dealing with. You're going to feel that they don't trust strangers, and it may feel personal, but it's probably just because probably their government doesn't treat them like trash, right? Like That's probably what it boils down to, because that's what happens a lot, right? Or like someone tried to come and take their stuff, and here you are, maybe looking a lot like someone who tried to come and take their stuff before. So keep in mind that like there are a lot of ways, and I've been talking about being an outsider, right? But there are a lot of different expectations you can set for yourself that can lead to disappointment, right? So coming in with as few as possible. I talked to Lynette in coaching yesterday, and Lynette just moved to Mazatlan. And Lynette was like, I think Lynette's older than I am. I think she might be in her 60s. I don't know. I don't know Lynette's age. But she was like, I'm outside all the time. All the time. Like I am social. She's like, I don't know what happened, but I moved to Mazatlan and I'm just outside. I said, with my mom, it was the same thing. She moved to Merida and it was like a whole new life outside all the time. Right? Lynette didn't have that expectation, but it was when she got to Mazatlan, it was even better than she expected. I live in Mexico City. I'm not outside all the time because I'm not an outside all the time person. And that brings me to my next point. And y'all have heard it before. Wherever you go, there you are, right? I'm not going to move to Mexico and be an outside person all the time. It's 90 degrees there right now in Mexico City. I have fans inside. Outside ain't got fans. So I'll be inside when I get there, right? It's really important that you remember that just going to a new place isn't going to redefine who you are, right? It's not going to change. You may have different inputs, right? And these different inputs may lead to different outputs. But if you've been having similar inputs all along and the outputs have stayed the same, you're probably not going to get a different output from the same or very similar input, right? Like when I lived in Ohio, there were plenty of opportunities to be outside in the summer months. Actually, fall. Fall was we had like a 3-week fall. That was when you wanted to be outside. And I would, and the rest of the time, I would be inside because outside's work, right? I have the same opportunities as I do in Mexico City to go do things and be with people. I have not changed. Moving to another location has not changed me enough that I'm going to want to do things more than I did years ago. That was probably 8 years ago I lived in Ohio. It's not changing me, right? I have similar inputs and I'm probably going to get similar outputs. Wherever you go, there you are. I know you've heard it before. It's kind of corny. It's kind of cheesy, but it's definitely true, right? You're there. It's yourself. So if you are trying to move somewhere to avoid something, almost like you're avoiding a person, right? Who can't pick up and find you where you are, right? Or like you've changed your phone number. If you have fallen off the face of the earth on purpose to avoid a very specific person or thing, maybe you're running from, I don't know, a tax lien. You don't want to go to jail like Wesley. I get it. I do. But if what you're trying to avoid is inside, like it's you're bringing that with you. So if you're depressed where you are, could it go away because it's like seasonal, right? And you live somewhere where there's no sun and now you're going somewhere where there is sun. Yes, it could. But if there's more to it than that, it might not, right? Moving to another location, I love it. I think it's an amazing thing for a lot of us, and more of us should do it. That's why I'm talking about it today. But it's not a cure-all for your problems, right? Whatever problem you have is just going to show up in a different hat, in a different place, right? It's there. Um, Michelle says, I'm literally looking at countries and evaluating where I can be myself, an introvert who loves inside but will pop out every now and then. You can do that anywhere. There are introverts everywhere. That's the thing I love. El Weezy says, don't do Ohio like that. Ohio has Columbus had a 3-week fall. We had a rib fest, we had a jazz fest, and then get back inside. What are you doing outside? Your fall is over. Your summer was too hot, your winter is too cold. You know that. Oh. So I think it's really important to make sure you have, like, if you're not moving to avoid something that you're going to be packing in your bag anyway, right? If you're moving to avoid your children and they don't know how to find you, perfectly valid, no matter how old they are, right? If you're moving because you're sad and you don't think you're going to be, or you're lonely and you don't think you're going to be lonely somewhere else, like, the loneliness thing could change if you put effort into going out and hanging out with people and doing things. But I would ask you if there's a reason that you can put effort in, you can put that effort in and get a result in the new location that you can't get in your current location. Maybe there is, right? I don't know you. I don't know where you're going. I don't know your life story. There may be a reason, maybe not. All right. I haven't done any, I've been carrying my yoga mat for this month and 2 months and some change. I haven't done enough yoga, so my hips are really sore. You didn't need to know that, but I needed to say it. Okay. I want you to recognize that any place you go is going to have shortfalls. And so this is kind of a two-parter. I'm going to call this a two-parter. One is identifying those shortfalls. And what's a shortfall for you is going to be different from what's a shortfall to the person next to you. This is very personal. Everything is going to have, like, bonuses and, like, positives and negatives, right? Every place you go is going to have positives and negatives. You need to figure out what the most important positives and negatives are for you and how flexible you are on those things, right? You're going to move to a place that does not have everything you want, right? Today online, the thing that someone was looking for was they wanted the same electronics and furniture that they would get in the US for the same price that they would get it in the US in Mexico City. And if you watch my videos, you know that's not going to happen. And a lot of people responded to that man by saying, don't move here. Don't move here. This is not for you. And I don't necessarily think that's not for him, but I do think that, like, you have to accept if you're moving to Mexico City and a lot of places around the world. But if you want to buy he wanted a very specific office. It might have been like steel case or something, a very specific office chair. And he was like, it's 80% more in Mexico. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I find it cheaper? And we're like, oh, nothing. Like, that's just, I tell you all the time, nice things cost a lot of money where I live. Nice things gonna run you a little bit, right? And so he's, like, confused, and everyone is responding to him in ways that weren't always helpful. But, like, you have to accept that if you want to move here, you have to either give up the idea of buying something that you're familiar with, like the thing you want, or paying the price that it costs to get the very specific thing you want. That's a shortfall in Mexico. Is it one that would stop me from moving there? Is it one that I would say should stop you from moving there? No. But He's like, I need to set up, I need, you know, screens and chairs and the phones and the this to work all. You can get it. But yes, when you saw online that the same chair was 80% more in Mexico, yes, that's what it costs. Welcome. Welcome to our worlds. Um, it's just, it's a balance. It's a balance. It's also, turn this down a bit. Oh, no, that's blue. So my light has a warm and cool feature and a turning the light down a little bit feature. A little cooler. What do we think? What's the best light? I think that works. All right. So figuring out what the shortfalls are from what you are looking for and learning how to live with that. Nichelle says, are there artisan woodworkers in Mexico where you can get a desk, or are there handmade and not insanely priced? Yes, but the man wanted a specific thing. He see what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't that he couldn't get a substitute. And it wasn't that he couldn't buy what he wanted. He could not buy what he wanted at the price he wants to pay. And he was so confused by that. He's like, am I just like, what's wrong? Why can't I find this? I'm like, it doesn't exist. Buying the exact same thing you want or you're used to in the US at the price you're used to paying in the US, isn't really a thing we do outside of the US. It's not. I pay a 16% tax on everything I consume, buy, eat in Mexico. 16. In Mexico City specifically. 16%. So yeah, if you're buying something expensive, it's extra expensive because you got to add 16%, right? It's annoying, but it's the trade-off. So figure out what the trade-offs are, and is it worth it to you, or are those deal breakers, right? Because coming in with the mindset of I have to have everything on my list, and for him, it says at least 16%. Yeah. I have to have everything on my list, and I have to get it how I want it. I want to get the steel case chair, and I want to pay the price I would pay in the US. Baby, you're gonna have to strap that steel case chair on your back from the US and walk it across the border. And at the border, they're gonna charge you 20% of what that chair is worth for bringing it in. So now where are we? What are we doing? What's happening here? You have to be flexible enough to say, I can get a handmade chair from an artisan for half the price of that chair, or I'll pay 80% more to get the exact chair I want. That's all. Right? And I'm talking about buying something now, but there are a lot of other things that are going to come up, right? We already talked about like being around people who look like you. Oh, wait. Being around people who look like you, right? Like your perfect city for you might not have a lot of people who look like you. And is that a reason not to move there? For some people, yes, that's going to be. For others, it's not. You got to find your deal breakers and do the research about whether your city has what the thing that is going to be a deal breaker for you, or is lacking the thing that's going to be a deal breaker, and whether it's really a deal breaker or you're flexible about it. And what I also see online is people lying to themselves about what they're willing to be flexible on. And then they're unhappy in like 3 months. I can't believe, right? Like the complaint is always the same type of thing. How come this? How come this is, and it's like, this is like, you don't hear yourself, but this is a deal breaker. It's not the city for you. This is not the city. Like there's going to be another city that might be the city for you. Maybe it's abroad, maybe it's in the US, who knows? But like, if you get stuck in a rut and you can't get past something, right? It might be a deal breaker for you. I don't think there's anything, I'm trying to think if I have any like quasi deal breakers in Mexico City. Uh-uh. Mm-mm. No. But okay, I'll name this for you. For me, Mexico City has good public transportation. Now I've moved myself to a point where I don't get to avail myself of all the public transportation as easily as I could, right? But I'm not willing to live in a town where I would have to drive everywhere. Now in Mexico City, sometimes I have to be driven to go where I want to go, but I don't specifically have to drive. And I think that um, if I lived in a city like that, that would be a deal breaker for me. I gotta get in a car and then park it. I cannot explain to you how much I hate valet parking. I almost got hit in a crosswalk by my own car driven by a valet once. He was driving like a bat out of hell trying to catch a light. And I was like, it's literally my car coming at me. I hate. And that's not even why. Like I hate wait. Like when I want to leave. If you've ever seen me leave a room, leave an event, you know that when I want to leave, I'm not standing outside waiting. I would rather walk 2 blocks to go get in my car, because when I turn the engine of my legs on and it's time to leave, my exit engine revs up. We got to keep the motion going. Got to keep the motion going. So waiting for a car. I don't like this. So yeah, like I don't want to live in a city where I have to drive. That would be a deal breaker for me. For Adelia, she said natural peanut butter or the ability to make her own. She needs to turn peanuts into peanut butter. It's funny. I enjoy peanut butter, but I don't enjoy what Adelia does with peanut butter. She mixes it with things, and I think peanut butter should be left on its own as like a good food. It don't need to be with like chocolate or other thing. No. Any hoodle. Um, so yeah, so there are things that are deal breakers for me in cities, and I don't live in cities to have to deal with that. It's one of the reasons I don't really enjoy US cities. Almost every city I go to in the US, when I get there, I have to rent a car if I'm going to be there for like a number of days. I got to park it myself. I got to do all this stuff. Ew. Uh, let's talk about it. If Mara says moving abroad is something I want to do. I was telling my therapist I don't want to run away from myself. Yes, and it's very possible to move abroad without running away from yourself, right? Like you know what you're doing. It's a plan, and even if you're doing the work, right? You can do the work wherever you go, unless the work is like you need to see someone in person, or like you need to face, I don't know, some national monument. You need to face the Brooklyn Bridge to do your work. If not, like you can do the work where you go. But it's important to know that like the work doesn't go away. The work doesn't go away when you move. Yes. Uh, Findile says, I think that's how you pronounce it. Findile Jacqueline Hickson. Hola todos. Please note flexibility is necessary for your mindset and your wallet. The peso is rallying against the dollar, moving forward in the global economy. Mexico is no longer cheap. I will tell you that every single place I've gone to on this trip, and I've been to I don't know how many countries, a lot of countries, a lot of countries. 7? Who knows? I don't know. Whatever. Um, Everyone is talking about how the inflation is beating them left, right. They dodging the inflation, and the inflation's coming for them. And I'm like, if there's inflation everywhere, is this natural? I need an economist who I trust to tell me, is this happening naturally, or are people behind the scenes, corporations, pulling the strings to make everybody's economy go to shit? Like, what? Why? Why? Why is everybody talking about how much more expensive things are right now? Suspicious. Tori Prophet Mother says the work might be a little different when you move. And we trust her because she's a therapist. It might be a little different. The work is still there, though. But, like if you hate being in the cold, doing the work in the sunshine might be exactly what you need, right? But the work is still there. All right. We were talking about recognizing the shortfalls of where you are. I think we need to get, Michelle says, I think we need to get over the idea of cheap cities. Even in cheap cities, you will not want to live cheaply forever. I learned that within my first week living in Bangkok, circa 2016. I also want to say that living in a city that has a low cost of living does not mean that you are going to be able to take advantage of the same low cost of living that other people who've lived there for a long time can take advantage of. Right? There may be someone who can live in a space that you can't live in because you need an elevator. And that may not be like, that's not a judgment. I I got old knees. I'm not walking up all them flights of stairs, any flights of stairs. It's being really real, right? And maybe if I lived in a different place, my knees wouldn't be old. Maybe if I my whole life I'd been eating different foods, my joints might be better. Maybe if I didn't have autoimmune issues that infect my joints, I would not need to live in a place that has an elevator. But baby, I do. So we're gonna have to do that, right? I may not be able to get the same cost of living as someone who can live, on some of them like fourth floor, which is really the fifth floor in Europe, walk-up apartments. Won't elevator me. That's what are we doing? These joints, they get inflamed if I look at any food that's not like water or air. I can drink water and I can eat air. Anything else that my joints are like, was that smart? I'll tell you tomorrow. And the answer is always no. So yeah, those ultra low cost places, often it's ultra low cost at the expense of the people who are living there, or it's not actually as low cost as people say it is. Mm-mm. Michelle left walk-ups behind in the 90s. I'm not a walk-up. I got tricked into one in Barcelona. It was the last time. And now I'm like, I need you to fully explain to me what. I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I was going to tell you about the time I got tricked into a place in Barcelona or Madrid, one of them. And I had to drag my giant suitcase up like 4 flights of stairs. And the stairs that like turn around and around and around, the wooden ones. But I was leaving Chiang Mai and I was on like the 18th floor and power went out in the building when I needed to leave to go to the airport. Fortunately, I was having like a going away swim party. And we had all left the pool. I'd come in, had a shower real quick. Homies were still over. And I was like, who gonna take my suitcase? So if you guys know Travis, who was a speaker at our first session, he was one of the people that took my suitcase. I had 2 suitcases. And there were 2 men there. Thank you. Because the elevator there's no power. We've had power the entire 3 months I've been in this apartment. And the one time we don't have power is when I need to go to the airport. Explain that to me. Yeah, Aileen says Airbnb was on the top floor, no elevator. By the time I made it upstairs, I didn't want to leave even for food. Cuba. I stayed in a place like that in Cuba in July. It was miserably hot. So when I was with my cousin, when we left, if we left for breakfast, we stayed gone until, and like came back with food. right? Because once we knew that once we went back upstairs, it was at least going to be like 3 hours before we left again. Like it wasn't like go upstairs, quick change, and go back. No. Once I hit them stairs, no, I'll be inside. I'll be inside. Um, One thing I did want to say about the low cost of living. So I live in Mexico City. I have a 2-bedroom apartment. When I was in uh, Atlanta, I realized that I have a friend who has a 2-bedroom house who's paying the same amount in rent that I'm paying in Atlanta. So the days of I can move abroad for a really, really low cost of living aren't behind us. I think you just have to get more creative about the places you go to. You got to go to the places no one's talking about yet. And do it carefully and respectfully. Anywho, another thing I want to talk about with mastering your move abroad mindset is learning to work with what you have. Now, this goes back a little bit to the guy who was like, why does the chair cost this much? Because I told you, I was in IKEA like, these numbers don't make sense. And like literally going to the US website and being like, how come it's 40% more? The same thing in IKEA. How come it's 40% more in Mexico than it is in the US? What are these? What's happening here? But it's what I have. Like if I want what I want, it's what I have, right? Yes, I could have a craftsman build me something. Am I gonna get it cheaper than this and quicker than this IKEA thing? Probably not. Probably not. And then I would have to speak to someone. And surprisingly, to some of you, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that. But yeah, learning to work with the things you have and knowing that like you can, wherever you are, survive with the things that other people have survived with. So one of the things that Monet Hambrick of A Traveling Child said at our very first Exodus Summit was that if children can live there, she knows her children can vacation there. So the question is always like, can I take kids here? Can I take kids there? And she's like, yeah, children live there. So like, of course my kids can vacation. Like, and I feel that way about places. Like if people live there, you can live there too. People survive there every day. You just may have to adjust your expectations, what you're working with. You got to work with what you have. You have to be flexible enough to say like, oh, like when I get back to Mexico in June, if it hasn't really been raining a lot, my building I live in a huge building. I live in a high floor in a huge building. I might not have water. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. I will have to figure out how to make that work. I think for a lot of us, it's going to require some community, right? That's something that a lot of other countries are very good at sort of that community living, like creating community and using it not as like a crutch when I need it, but consistently having an ecosystem where the community does for each other. That's important to start building when you move abroad. And it's important to know that like you can rely on it, right? There's community that you can rely on where you go. So like if I'm out of water at some point, I may be calling a daily like, you got water? Can I come shower? Right? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like when I get there. The bills are still coming. They're still getting paid. But will I have access to what? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but learning to figure out like whatever things that I have, how do I work with them? How do the locals work with them? So when they have a water shortage, when the other people in Mexico City have been out of water on the outskirts of the city, some of the outlying areas for quite a while. So like, what are they doing? Right. And you kind of have to learn from the community. How are they getting by? And how can you adjust that to your specific situation? So how do you learn to work with what you have? Kat says community care like private individuals providing ambulance services. Yep. Mm-hmm. Who's your community? How do you build that community? Who is, for me, I think the question would be who is the closest person to me who I could speak English to if I in an emergency. And the reason I say English is if I'm having a true emergency, my Spanish may not be enough, right? It may, but sometimes I get on these videos and I forget my name. So like, will I be able to remember how to say something in Spanish that I've probably never said before in my life? Because when you're learning a language, you don't usually use emergency terms, right? Like I cut off my thumb isn't something I've ever learned how to say. I might be able to piece it together, or maybe just like waving it around, like, "Hey, don't have a thumb," right? Like, but like knowing which neighbors on my floor are nice, are kind, and speak some English, helpful for me, right? Um, I know which ones. I know which doors not to knock on in my hallway. In my hallway, I'm aware of that, and not because they don't speak English, but because of other like I don't trust y'all. But like I have in my mind like my something goes wrong plan. I have my something goes wrong plan, right? I know the one of my neighbors speaks Chinese and very, very fluent Spanish. Chinese and Spanish, no English. A possibility, right? If I can get it out in Spanish, it's a possibility. Otherwise, we're struggling. Mandarin, I guess she speaks Mandarin. I shouldn't have said Chinese, but one of the Chinese languages, I think, is Mandarin. But yeah, I think it's important to know like what you're working with and how you can have a plan that suits your life within that time. So Lori, you wrote an interesting comment, which is we complain about issues in other countries, but Houston is the fourth largest city in the U.S. And after a tornado, some people were without power for 7 days. Stuff happens. That's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about a situation where like people don't have water for months at a time, and that's not a complaint. We're not complaining about it. We're saying how do you live in that situation if you're not used to it, right? So being without power for a short amount of time is one thing. The entire city not having water, which is what we're leading up to because it's significantly hotter than expected and we have significantly less rain than expected. So we're heading to that point quickly, is a different situation than 7 days of no power. Not that 7 days of no power isn't significant, it is, but like not a drop to drink is a different in the entire metropolitan area of 23 million people is a different kind of situation, right? And for people who don't have the same built-in community, it's important that they make a plan. If I was new in Houston, I would want to kind of have a plan too, like who are the neighbors I think I'm all right and might tell me where there's water for sale on the street, right? Like who are the neighbors who were going to be like, I don't mess with her, just so that I have a better idea of what I would need to do. If that's out of power, like who has a generator that might be kind and let me plug something in for a second. That's the kind of planning we're talking about when we talk about community care. It's not about complaining about what the cities don't have. It's about saying, in the event that I need something, have I built a strong enough network that I can yet someone wants to do something for me, right? It's just, we need to understand that in other countries, that's where I started, other countries, because a lot of them tend to be less individualistic than the US, they have a community network already created, and that's how they get by. And you might not have that community network already created. So part of moving to a place is figuring out, I've said this before, is figuring out how you can fill in the gaps that the locals fill in with community if you don't have that community. I mean, how do you build community that gets you where you want to go, right? How do you build a community that helps you? Adele tells me all the time stuff, like just hits me up and be like, hey, this is happening. And I hit her up to be like, hey, this is happening. And without that, I would only have half the news. Right? It takes that kind of community of, did you hear about this? Did you know about this? And these are the things I want you to think about, like, because you can move abroad and live the same individualistic lifestyle that a lot of us live in the US. And maybe you don't live in the US because you have support structures, but unless those support structures are coming with you when you move abroad, your life may be more individual unless you start building those support structures when you move abroad. So, yeah, it's just important to know what you have and what you don't have compared to, I would say, like the average local, right? We've talked about this on the channel before. Like, if I go to, if the public hospitals expect you to bring your own sheets and for someone to bring you food, like if you go to jail, someone needs to bring you food if you want to eat in some of the local jails, right? Like, someone whose entire family is in Mexico is in a better position to deal with that, or specifically if they're in the same city, in a much better position to deal with that than someone who moved abroad by themselves, right? So I know if I need to go to a hospital, I can't go to a public hospital, because if I need to be in a hospital, I probably can't feed myself. And this came up specifically during like the height of the pandemic. Like, I don't know that I would feel comfortable asking anyone to come into a public hospital to bring me food. So that community construct that has worked for so long and so well for people in public hospitals, someone comes up every day and drops off food. That's how you eat here in the hospital, in some places, in some public hospitals. But if that's what's going on and I don't feel comfortable asking that of someone, I can't go to a public hospital because I don't have anyone dropping me off food. I need to pay for a private hospital, right? So that's when I talk about figuring out what are the shortcomings of what you have and how do you fill them in a meaningful way. Sometimes it's going to be money, right? And then sometimes it's just money. And then sometimes it's because you've created your own community and someone can help you. What are we talking about? Oh, someone here. I'm not going to name any names, but y'all might already know who it is. You see the look on my face. You might know who I'm talking about. Someone here was having a hard time. And even though they've spent years building community, they were hesitant to ask people to help them during their hard time. And I help with things like a meal train. This person was having a hard time and was going to provide meals for someone else who was having another hard time. Instead of saying, like, how can I get my people to do a meal train for both of us? And those are the things that you may not already have created as you step into a new place. People who you've been in community with enough that they're willing to provide meals for you when you need it, right? So if you don't have that, I recommend you start building that. You can also order Uber Eats. Listen, like I said, so a lot of times money can fill the gap. If you're in a place where there's delivery food, you can also order delivery. But if you've spent the time building community, and specifically for the person I'm talking about, she knows who she is. Spent the time building community and spent the time serving community, right? This is not someone who's like, I have shown up and I would like people to do things for me. This is someone who's been doing for her community for a long time. It's okay to ask for the help. That's not why we build community, but it's why community exists, right? It's why community exists, because I do for you, you do for me, or I do for you, you do for her. She in 6 years does for me. It's the point. So understand what either the location is lacking or what are lacking versus the rest of the population, and figure out how to build that, how to fill those gaps. Typically, the ways to fill them are money or community. Probably a little light fraud too, but I don't. It depends on the situation. I don't know. I'm assuming a little bit of fraud could help fill some of those gaps too. A little bit of fraud can fill most things. But that's not where this conversation is going today. It just, a constant reminder, right? Ooh, Tracy Collins says, community is everything abroad. Our gas stove blew up with me right there, and it was our community that we called upon. You need community. Yes. Right? So your mindset can't be, I hear this occasionally. I want to move abroad to a place where I won't see any other Americans. You know who you can build community with the quickest? Other Americans, because they understand. They've been where you are. They know what you need. Someone who's lived in that place their whole life doesn't know what you need, because they don't know what you don't have. They don't know what you don't know. They don't know what paperwork you need to fill out in order to turn your lights on after midnight if you're a foreigner, right? Or it's whatever crazy other thing it could be. Other foreigners do. So the idea of I'm going to go it alone, me and my local community, who's of course going to accept me from the beginning, like we're family. We talked about that first part, but last part in the beginning of this video is a challenge. Turning your back on any part of the larger community when you're new abroad, I think twice about it. You want to make friends and not alienate people. All right. So we're going to learn to work with what we have. We're going to set our expectations reasonably. We're going to recognize the shortfalls of where we're going. Wherever we go, there we are. And we're going to use the tools you know exist to create the life you want. It's on my list. What are the tools that are there? What are the resources? We've talked about the resources that aren't there, but what are the resources that are there, right? What are the, if you want to, now for a lot of us, the easiest way to make a new friend is to get in a Facebook group, especially a foreigner friend, and find somebody who looks interesting and not like a serial killer, and meet them for lunch, dinner, whatever. Easy peasy. We all meeting over food. We're eating, living the good life. But maybe there's a hobby you've always wanted to pursue, and you can look up how to do this interesting thing in the new language you're learning, and boom, you've probably met some local friends, maybe some foreigners. You're learning some new words in that language, probably some new curse words too, because whenever you're learning something, maybe there's going to be some words spoken. And you have a new outlet, right? So how are you pursuing the things that bring you joy within the confines that exist in the new place you are? right? So like, how are you pursuing your new life? How are you building your new life with the things that exist, right? Because wherever we go, there are resources that we just need to look into. I haven't done the research on this yet, but I just know in my spirit that somewhere within the 23 million people in the metropolitan area, there is someone who teaches a stained glass class. And I want to take one. When I get back, that's on my list. I actually sent Stephanie a text the other day, which I know she didn't see because if she saw it, she would have responded to me. But what I said to her was that during summit season, we should have a bucket list. So people were talking about their summer, some people online talking about their summer bucket list. Like, I don't need a summer bucket list. I need like an Exodus season bucket list. Because if I don't have things that I am doing, like consciously attempting to do, I will sit in my house at my desk when I have a meeting, and then immediately to the couch when I don't have a meeting with my laptop on my lap. I'm going from the desktop to the laptop and stare at summit stuff for 2.5 months in a row. And that's I will not leave. I will not go outside. I will sit there. I will do nothing but plan summit stuff. And so I'm like, I need to have a list of things I want to do that are not staring at this computer. And one of the things is I want to take a stained glass class. Is someone teaching it? Probably. It's a huge city. We got colleges. Someone's got a blowtorch I can use. I don't know that blowtorches are really involved with stained glass, but I feel like it would be. This is my best guess. I'm going with that. So yeah. They do all the crafty things here. Adelia took sewing classes. I know she learned some curse words. She also learned some other words in Spanish that were related to the sewing. Oh, and she took a print making class. Did she take a sewing class as well? I don't remember. I know she took a print making class. And then she had prints, and I got a printed t-shirt, because yes, right? Okay, so now here you go with the soldering, knowing the real words. Yes, it's probably a soldering iron now that you've said it, but I also like the thought of holding a blowtorch. So like, what do I need to do to hold a blowtorch and like wear the mask? Anything? One of y'all knows. Stephanie dropped the easel emoji, which means she's here still. So she must have heard me say that she didn't respond to my text. Did she? She still hasn't responded to my text. It's okay. It's just the price I pay. All right. So what are the things you have in your city that you can use to get closer to the life you want to live, right? Look at what's available to you. A lot of times people focus. All right. A lot of times people focus on language classes, and language classes are important, but language classes aren't the end all be all of how you can learn a language. Like, you can learn a language by doing everything and sitting in a language class. Now, if you have to do it, or it helps you like towards your citizenship journey, who am I to tell you not to do that? And this is not me telling you not to take a language class. This is me saying that, like, if you've always wanted to knit, take a knitting class in a language you don't understand and see what happens. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. You know, there's a way. And so if you can figure out what you want to pursue in your new life, And I've said this before, when you move abroad, you get to be a new person, right? You get to be a new person. So who as a new person, unless you're moving with like people who know you, which, why would you do that? Leave them behind. So your children are all under 18. They'll figure it out. They're fine. Leave them in whatever city they're in. Peoria. Leave them kids in Peoria. All right. Go live your wild and beautiful life and pick up the hobby that you've always wanted to pick up, right? Like allow yourself some space to grow into the person you want to be. And yes, you may want to be a person who speaks fluent Indonesian. And so maybe you take a language class. Or maybe you take a ballet class in Indonesian. I don't really, is that really the name of their language? I don't know. What language? I'm gonna switch that to Thai real quick because I know that's an actual language. And so, yeah, maybe you take ballet classes in Thai. Bahasa Indonesia. I'm telling you, if there's something obscure, Adelia knows it. Bahasa. Take a pottery class. Dara was taking a pottery class, doing pottery things. I don't know if she's taking a class in Mexico City, and that was a good outlet for her. You will learn some new words. Findile says, are there stained glass classes with an English teacher? Possibly. But like, once I know the basics of like how not to lose a finger, I want to do this in a different language. But if I didn't want to, you can find, I'm sure, 23 million people, I'm sure someone teaches this in English. Michelle says, I'm definitely taking my yoga classes in Thai. I can take a yoga class in any language. I'm also a yoga teacher, so that helps. Unless the teacher is, I've been in a class and I'm like, this sequence is hot garbage. I cannot follow you because the body's not supposed to be doing what you're doing, right? We're not doing yoga. We're playing, what's the one where you put your left hand on the red circle? That thing. But only once in another language have I been like, girl, what is this? And it's because the sequencing was terrible. But I feel like, I've said this before, if you can do something in one language, there's a very good chance you can do it in a lot more languages. Twister, thank you. You can figure out how to do the things in more languages if give it your best shot. Give it your best shot. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You know how to do things. If you can do it in one language, I can grocery shop anywhere because I can grocery shop in English. Anywhere. Now, do I know all the details? Is there a club card I could have gotten to get 10% off? Probably. Am I going to pay 10% more because I don't know what that sign says in Bahasa Indonesia? Bahasa Indonesia. I don't know. I don't know. So, but if you can do it in one language, you can do it in another language. So it's just being a lot of, we're going to add this to the list of mindset things. Being confident that you can do the thing in another language. Just be confident that like, Aileen watches Zumba in Spanish in YouTube. If you can do it in English, you can do it in Spanish. I took my first Pilates reformer class in Mexico was a Spanish speaking class where the instructor also spoke English. So every once in a while he'd look over, because there were a couple of us in the class, he'd look over at us and be like, no girl, left foot. I'd be like, oh, okay, my bad. Because also if you've never done reformer Pilates, there's a lot of instructions coming at you at the same time. It's like a tornado of instructions. Because you got to point your toe and twist it in this direction, and then you got to put it there, and then you got to push, and then you got to pull, and you got to do, it's a lot coming at you. So sometimes, even even now to this day. So I'm like, let me just look and see what she's doing. I hope she knows what she's doing. But the first time I did it, it was in Spanish with an English teacher, an English speaking teacher. So I could get corrections every now and then. After about, I would say like maybe 5 of those classes, I went to Spanish. I went to a different studio where it's in Spanish only, and the teachers do not speak English. So there's no coming to you to be like wrong or like bend your knee or twist or do that. Mm-mm. It's all Spanish all the time. And I'm still like learning body parts in that class. I didn't know muñeco was wrist. I thought muñeco was doll. And I was like, why does he keep talking about dolls in this class? What are we talking about? What's happening? I do not understand. Right. But like slowly learning those things is okay. I don't have to know it all. I didn't have to know it all in the beginning because unlike me with either a soldering iron or a blowtorch, like I'm not gonna hurt myself too bad. The muscles will ache, but I'm not gonna hurt myself too bad doing Pilates, right? Like if I don't have my toe pointed at the angle that the instructor might like, I might get a mean side eye, but I'm not gonna like fail the class, right? Like it's okay, right? You get to be a beginner again in a lot of these things, especially when you're doing them in a new language. You get to be a beginner again. Baby, I don't know the words you're saying. So how am I supposed to do this? I'm just going to sit here and do what other people are doing until the words make sense to me. That was a lot of my first Pilates experience. I'll figure out, listen, we lay on our backs for the most part until they get us standing up and doing some crazy things. We lay on our backs and we push and we pull. I'm gonna get it, right? And so if you've done something before, and I had never done reformer Pilates before I did the class that was Spanish with a little bit of English thrown in. So it was a new thing for me. And I just leaned into it being new because I saw that when I did it, my joints hurt less, my knees hurt less when I do Pilates regularly. And so I was like, I'm a Pilates girl now. Because it was after my knee surgery and my left knee was still hurting regularly. And it was like, if being someone who struggles in Pilates in a Spanish speaking class, if struggling through Pilates in this class, because it's painful, what do we do? Why does everything hurt? Why is it so hard? It's just like I said, I'm just laying on my back for the most time and I'm just pointing my toes. I'm just doing this. I'm just bending my knees or pointing my toes for the most part. It's more complicated. It's not like simplified Pilates. Thank you, Joseph. But what if I can do that and my knee pain goes away? I think I want to be a Pilates girl. And if I have to do that in Spanish, Pilates en español, porfa. I'm gonna do it, right? See what you have to work with and work with it, right? We talked early about things that you don't have, but look at the things you do have access to. My Pilates class, the one that spoke English was an hour each way to get to. The one that speaks no English, every instructor in that class is Spanish, in that studio is Spanish only. It's like 10 to 15 minutes away. You know I'm going to the one that's 10 to 15 minutes away. I speak Spanish. They talk about me sometimes. Like they're very nice. They love seeing me there. But they also, like last time I went there, I hadn't been there in a while and I showed up for my first class after an absence. The woman who I've been looking in her face for the receptionist, I've been seeing her for 2 years, was like, do you really live here? And I was like, wait a minute. What? Of course I've been coming to the studio for 2 years. She was like, okay, sure. But I've built my community. Like I see them in the streets every once in a while. And those are like my Pilates ladies and gentlemen. We're a community because Pilates makes my knee feel better. And I want to be someone who walks without pain. And so I use the Spanish only Pilates class that I will go to as opposed to be sprinkled in English class, which I won't go to because it takes too long to get there. Switch studios. The other class, my girls, a bunch of my friends went to the other class too, which is how I actually started going. But I was like, it's not realistic for me to go there. So now I have to go into a Pilates studio where I know nobody and I've made friends there. I go there and there are women who are like, hey, I get hugs in class. I've built community by taking the risk and going to a class. So it all kind of like doubles back, right? Find the thing, become the person you want to be. You get to be a new person. I wanted to be a person who did not walk, who did not feel pain when they walked. Pilates helped. I'm a Pilates girl. I go to a Pilates studio where no one speaks English. Some of the customers do. None of the employees do. I go to Pilates studio where instead of left Pilates studio where I had friends and community to one where I had to make friends and community. And I did, right? I now have friends who are from Mexico City because of Pilates class. Do the thing, branch out, right? Open up the possibilities, right? And do something you've always wanted to do. I have not always wanted to take stained glass classes. I was in two different museums the other day. They both had really good stained glass exhibits. And if you've ever met me, in my brain I was like, I think I could do that. Why? Hubris, delusion, who knows? But I was like, I want to try that. I do. I want to make that. Is my make that going to look like their make that? Possibly not. But I want to, right? Open it up. Who could you be? What could you do? What is available for you? Right? What's available for you out there? All right. What are some mindset things that you see trick people up when they move abroad? Or let's talk about it. I think that was my list. My wrist hurt. I'm like, have I eaten gluten lately? I don't think so. My child is late because they had a vegan cooking class. What did you learn how to cook in your vegan cooking class? I'd like more details. I still have a question about jazz in Mexico City. That's hard because it's going to depend on which jazz. I don't think there are enough jazz venues to move specifically to a neighborhood because of jazz, unless there's a very specific jazz club that you really like and you want to be like walking distance to it, right? Unless you want to be like walking distance to Parker and Lenox, I don't think it makes sense to like move somewhere with because there's no like, if you live here, you'll get a real good live jazz vibe. There's like, in each neighborhood, there might be like one. In each of like 3 or 4 neighborhoods, there might be one jazz bar. So it just depends on what you want. But if you want something like, this is a good point, live jazz is available. Is it going to be available every night of the week? Probably not. Is it going to be available in the distance you want it to be from your home and the time it takes, like a 10-minute walk? Probably not. Is it, are you going to start seeing the same performers performing over and over and over again? Yes, but that's what you're working with, right? And so how do you work that into the life that you want to live? There's a limitation in live jazz with live jazz in Mexico. There just is. It's not unlimited. I see what, okay. So Sarah, so Yoshi's is an Oakland jazz club. I get what you're saying, but like, did you need to live near Yoshi's to go to Yoshi's? And that's why I'm pushing back a little bit. I don't necessarily think that's a good enough reason to live near them. And there are different ones. So I'd want you to see them and see which ones you really liked. Let's see. Okay, Nubianette says that's good to know about Pilates. I'd be in Portugal now if I hadn't torn my meniscus. I just started physical therapy and told them I have to be able to do uneven European stairs. So I tore my meniscus. That's why I had surgery. PT was fine, but I did not. I was 18 months past surgery and I still had pain when I walked. Until I started Pilates and the pain went away. Just like that. So this is not me trying to get you in like the Pilates club or like the cool, trendy thing right now club. This is me saying that like I was in pain for 18 months after my surgery. I took Pilates and literally like within a week, gone. Now, some of that might have been, it's the most regular form of exercise I was doing, right? So was I walking? Yes. Was I walking every day? No, I wasn't doing Pilates every day either, but something about the Pilates and the amount of bending you have to do with your knee really worked for my knee. All right. What other mindsets things do you guys see come up? While we're thinking about that, I'm gonna tell you about my haircut. Because I have a hairdresser in London. But I feel very like 90s PE teacher. And that might not be accurate, but that's how I'm feeling right now. If it's not 90s PE teacher, y'all tell me what it is. Because it's just, that's what it's giving me. Maybe even a little like 90s R&B singer. I don't know why. It just is. Maybe it's like the style, but it would be like permed, but like in this kind of style. I don't know what's going on. 90s living single, yes. But like, I don't think it would be natural. I think it would have been permed. I started rewatching Living Single for the first time. Like watching from from when it first came out originally. And that last season is so bad. The first 4 seasons are so good. And that last season, I'm still like stuck because every time I try to watch an episode, I'm like, this is just not good. But that's to say, if you haven't rewatched it recently, rewatch. I think it's on Hulu. Rewatch the first couple of seasons. All the seasons that have like 23, 24 episodes. That last season, it has like 12, and I see why they cut it short. I'm like, I want to get. I'm the kind of person that either has like I want to finish it, and I can't finish it. I can't finish it. Not good. But last season was the season the cast revolted against the network. I was trying to figure out. I was like, it wasn't a writer's strike. I was like, why is this so not great? Okay, so Stephanie says Halle Berry. I accept that. I heard En Vogue also accepted. Okay, I saw someone, Kat asked how this is going to grow out a month from now. This is the longest my hair is going to be because it's styled and defined. I shrink a lot. When I came in to we cut inches off today. And when I came in with my hair shrunken this morning, it was shrunken shorter than this, which is what I want. I want it to be long on the top and super short on the sides. So I think we're seeing first day here today, and then by tomorrow, we're going to see shrunken hair. And so when it grows out and I'm not getting the full expansiveness, I think it's going to work. That is our bet. Our bet is that it's going to work because my hair shrinks so much that it's going to be like a taper when it's not like fresh out of the drying machine. So yeah, I did get my hair cut in Europe. I got it done in London. My hairdresser here is called Fola. She is also known as the curl coach. I'm gonna look her up and drop her link because I really love her. Like, I wouldn't just say that. Let's see if I can find her. And you can tell her I sent you. I don't get anything for that. I just truly enjoy her. Oh, come on, my light's in the way. She's good on education. We spent maybe 30 minutes talking about the haircut before we actually cut the hair this morning. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that kind of like, I'm going to talk you through this kind of thing. What do we want? What are you looking for? What are you concerned about? Blah, blah, blah. So that's what we're doing. It feels, I think it's very dimensional in a way that I haven't had my hair cut in a while. So it does feel, it's feeling 90s for me. Michelle's keeping a list of Black hairdressers in every city. So, and I saw the question that was really important, which was, isn't the last season where Kyle and Max get together? There's a season after that. I think we've all blocked it out of our brains. We've blocked it out. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. I don't like it. All right. Yes, the same lady. I'm back to the same. Listen. One thing you know about me, I like what I like. If I find something I like, I'm going back. I'm buying 7 of the same things. So I now have my hairdresser is in London. So when I want to come get a cut, I'll be in London. We also talked through, this is why I think it's really important. And I'm not going to give you the details about this because the specifics, because it's not really important, but I'm going to tell you generally what she also helped me do was I looked at 2 different Mexico City hairdressers and I talked with her. I was like, which hairdresser do you think would be a good choice for me to go to? And we talked through that, of these 2 choices here, and she was like, okay, so this one can do this really well and this one does this really well, but this one isn't good at that. Looking at the photos and what they showed, I'm thinking, and I felt like it wasn't you know what I mean? It wasn't the, no, you have to come back to me. It was, you don't live where I live. So let's find you someone who could do what you want where you are. And that was really important to me. So I think that if you're going to find a hairdresser abroad, that's a really good strategy, is have someone, we were able to figure out how I could keep up the style without flying back to see her every 3 months. Because who's doing that? Dara is in Madrid. Yeah. Without me. Her and Yolanda are going to meet up. Without me. All right, are we done? We're done with mindset stuff? Is that what happened? Yes, Stephanie, a dude moved in and that woman moved in too. Why are there into the building? What's happening? Okay, so Maya says, mindset wise, it's the belief that I need to have a fully remote work from anywhere or my business is more consistent before making any moves. You're not completely wrong, but you're not completely right, right? What you need are resources, and resources often look like money. But we have to be open to money coming in different forms than money we have earned through labor, right? And we also have to make sure when we feel like money's in the way, we've done the math. Do the math. I'm going to get that tattooed on my neck. Wait, I have to read this, but right? Well, I can't tell which way it would be, if it's this way or this way. Do the math, right? Like, do you need more money or do you have money? This is something we talked about in coaching yesterday. I have a woman who does not want to go to work anymore, stressed out on leave because she's stressed and she didn't want to go to work, but she feels like she needs to go to work, but she's got a fully paid for house. Sell your house. I was like, do you love the house? No. What's the point of going to work at a job that might kill you? To live in a house you don't even love, you don't love. If it was like I love this house, I can't imagine not working anywhere. Like not living anywhere but this house would be different. But if it's like I just live here and it's paid off, you got any kind of equity? And I know someone's gonna come here. Maybe someone already is typing their fingers right now to say houses, we need to keep houses in the community because that's how we build wealth and generational wealth. And generational wealth doesn't help you when you're dead. Your kids want you alive and prosperous. Any kid that you would give a house to help them build generational wealth should want you alive and healthy more than they want a house. If they don't want you alive and healthy more than they want a house, sell the house. Right? Sell the house. Right? So you may already have the money you need somewhere. You may need less money than you think. Do the math. How much money do you actually have? How many assets do you actually have? It may cost less than you think. A pot of money may be waiting there for you outside. When you go outside, you might find a bag of 16 gold coins on the corner that are not owned by the mob. You're going to turn them in a police station. The police are going to say, oh no, these are free and clear. Those are yours. Take them. This is clearly a fantasy because you know. Okay. But yes, and then this money is yours and you get to go spend it, right? Like we get so tied to the idea of money coming from labor, and then we feel like we can't not labor because that's the magic that makes money. And it doesn't have to be labor. I don't know where, right? Like this is not me saying that there's going to be a fountain of money outside. I can't direct you to the fountain of money, but I know that there is more money out there for you somewhere. Someone might be leaving you money. Let's not tie our futures to our labor. That's all I'm saying. Try to see if you can. I know how much money I want to receive this year. My goal has nothing to do with earning money. My money goal for the year is about receiving money. That's one of my mindset things. And it started as earn. I want to earn this amount of money. And then eventually I crossed it out and I was like, no, I don't actually want to earn that money. Because earn sounds like labor. I want to receive this amount of money. If I get the opportunity to follow in Anna Nicole Smith's footsteps without the children who are contesting the will, and I can receive money, who am I to say I need to earn it? Although I feel like she earned it. We're going to separate our any kind of labor from what we want in life. Hi, friends. I see you, girl. I see you. Um, we're going to separate labor. Labor is just a thing. It doesn't. The money doesn't have to come from business. It doesn't have to come from work or remote job. It can come from those, but it doesn't have to. I want all of you to separate your labor from your goals. The thing I want does not have to come from my labor. It can just appear. Because, and some of you heard me say this yesterday. Hi, friends. You've already labored enough. If you're watching this, there's like a 75 or higher % chance that you are a Black woman. If you're watching this, you've already labored enough for 17 lifetimes. The goal is the goal. Labor is one way to get there. You've already labored. I'm gonna say it again, so my friend hears me because I know she's here. If you have a paid off house, you have worked in America. If in America you have paid off your student loans or you have paid off a mortgage, you have worked hard enough to quit everything right now. Just quit everything. You have already worked hard enough. If you have paid off your student loans, if you've paid off a mortgage, you have already worked hard enough. In most other countries in the world, you'd be like, I'm done now. Not in America, because there's no such thing as done in America. You have worked hard enough. You have worked long enough. You have sacrificed enough for long enough. You don't need to also labor now. You know what I mean? Like if there's a way to use the labor you've already done to get you where you want to go now, do that. You don't have to. You don't have to labor. I want us to walk away from it. You've done it. Michelle's working at 14, Glamazine at 13, me at 12. I've labored. I've labored for a lifetime. I labor now, right? This, no matter what anyone tells you, being on YouTube, speaking, I'm at an hour and 38 minutes. It's labor. It's labor. It's not taxing labor for me, but it's labor. I had to put on a face. I had to show up. I couldn't be out in the sunny streets right now. I'm not with my friends. I'm with my friends, but not like my physical friends who are in London right now. I'm here. There are sacrifices being made for me to be here, right? But they're sacrifices that I actually like making. They're still sacrifices. They're sacrifices I like making. I don't feel like I used to feel like when I'm laboring. And if you are laboring in a way that brings the blues, what is your exit plan? This was not supposed to be a talk about labor, but here we are. We're separating labor from our goals, unrelated things. You can get to your goal without carrying the world on your back. You can do it. I believe in us. I do. Frances labored since she was 12. I get it. I get it. Monique, I can't say that. I'm so sorry. I told someone I wanted to retire now at 34. They asked me what I would do with my life. It was so hilarious that I walked away. Yeah. And a lot of that is because if they didn't see it as possible for them, as achievable for them, they don't understand how you can achieve it. And it's easier for them to say, you'd be bored. I talked to a guy, another lawyer, on a train the other day. And he was traveling for 2 weeks. And it was his big vacation. And he was like, how long are you traveling for? And I was like, 2.5 months. And he was like, wait. And he dropped it. He was a lawyer. And I dropped it right back. Because, like, if we're whipping out our dicks, hold up a second. Hold up a second, right? Like, it was completely irrelevant to what we were talking about. But if you want to, oh, was that the big joke? That was not the big joker. Anyhow, he's talking about like how he wants to, I told him, I'm retired. He was like, oh, I want to one day. And I'm like, you gotta be 20 years older than I am. I think you're in your mid to late 60s. And you're talking about one day you're going to retire. I want to before I get too old. And I'm like, what? I think you're kicking down the door like 67, big dog. Not that that's too old to live your life, but when you're like, one day, I think I'll get there one day. What is the day? What is the exit plan? What are we doing? What's happening? So yeah, he was like, he said the same thing. Like, I'm starting to get old and like, I can't really move the way I want to. And you're still waiting for one day. He also talked about how successful he was. And that's one of the reasons he didn't want to retire now, was because his brain was still, and I was like, your brain's still going to do that for a long time. Long after your body starts slowing down, your brain is still going to be clicking and clacking. If you wait until the day your brain isn't turning over, your body will have long since been like dragging bags on trains in Europe for a month. No. So I don't even know how we got there, besides that man being like, he was lovely, other than the fact that he thought telling me he was a lawyer was going to impress me. And I was like, okay. In everybody, like, what are we doing? Yeah, we can wait. He's waiting. He's on his 2 or 3 week vacation now, and it's great, but he's got to get back. He said, I got to get back to the office. Do you have to get back to the office? When will you not go back to the office? Because he can't figure out how to separate labor from his goals. Labor is his life. I bet you, and I know because he said it unprovoked. He dropped that he was a lawyer. It's how he defines himself, right? It's how he defines himself. He's not going to retire because that's who he is. He is a lawyer. And a lot of us are a lot of us are our labor, and that labor isn't always work. Sometimes that labor is family, right? Sometimes that labor is a volunteer position. Sometimes that labor is mother. Sometimes that labor is wife. Y'all are the ones I worry about the most. I'm sorry. Sometimes the labor is who you are in the community, but that's how you define yourself, and it's really hard to walk away from. That man said, as a lawyer, I was like, oh. And that's why you still, because it wasn't necessary. But you dropped it because that's how you see yourself. You're not going to retire anytime soon. Or you wouldn't be dropping I'm a lawyer in conversations where it's not needed. It's how you see yourself. Now, if you just added retired on top of that, this conversation would have flowed the same. He said, as a lawyer, I know when to stop asking questions. Or he said, I know what questions not to ask. As a lawyer, I know what questions not to ask. And I responded, as a very good lawyer, I know what questions not to answer. Are we just what game are we playing? You never He's gonna be dropping that as a lawyer until the casket closes. Until the casket closes. That man is gonna drop that. And there's something that you're holding on to, and it may be the thing that puts you in the ground faster. I mean, so serious about this. It might be the thing that puts you in the ground faster is the thing you're holding on to because it defines you. We're gonna let that go. When your occupation is your identity, retiring, right? He's like, I don't know when I could do that. And I'm like, of course. It's who you are. And then he mentioned he was traveling with a woman for weeks, and he described her as his paralegal. And I was like, is that your wife? Your girlfriend? His paralegal. And I was like, it's some kind of intimate relationship because you're going to family events. But when you're talking to me, you describe her as your paralegal. What? Until you're in the ground. I want better for y'all. I want you to know that what you do, whether that is paid work or unpaid labor, isn't who you are. Right? Oh, Nubian Nat, I saw your comment and you got an 80-year-old coworker who drives 45 minutes to get to the office? Ugh. That made my heart hurt. 45 minutes? 80s? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I said, oh, well. No, I think that was his wife, but she works in his office. I do think it was his wife. From something else that happened there, I think, and the way she interacted with him, I think it was his wife, but she works in his office, so he referred to her as his paralegal. And I was like, I would stab you. I would definitely. I would stab you if you ever referred to me outside of the office. If I'm in an intimate relationship with you, a public one, they're going to public family events, a public relationship, you refer to me as your paralegal. Boy, even if you have a wife, I'm your girlfriend. Like, what are we doing? I'm in a train in where we were, I think Edinburgh, maybe. Mm-mm. Don't let that job, right, be the reason that you can't retire. But the definition of who you are be the reason you can't retire. Because it's also likely the thing that's going to put you in the ground. Take a break, take a nap, let it go. We're separating our labor from our goals. I want a thing. I don't care how I get it. I mean, not like murder or mayhem, right? Like, I don't want to like sacrifice animals. Will I eat them? Yes. Will I sacrifice them just to get to my goals? Depends on the animal, but probably not. But right, like this is not what I have in mind. What I mean is that like I want a thing. And if a thing is given to me because I treated someone with kindness in a London street, does it make it any less valuable or real or tangible than if I got the thing because I worked really hard for 20 more years? Listen, Glamazini, I'm not saying you can't do mayhem. I'm saying mayhem isn't the top thing on my list. Gifts, truly, gifts are the top thing on my list. I would like to receive all of these things as like no strings attached gifts, all of my goals. Someone just hands me a thing and says, hi, here you go. Why not? I'm not saying mayhem's not possible. A little light fraud, but preferably gifts. See, the reason I wouldn't even go towards little fraud is because that's labor. They be working. Okay, y'all. I'm trying to figure out whether someone's trying to scam me. I don't know. This is totally unrelated. I got a voicemail yesterday. I didn't see it, let's say. So yesterday was Saturday, got a voicemail, and it said, I'm gonna read this to you because it's insane. If you're watching this channel, young lady who sent me this voicemail, it was insane. I want you to know that. Absolutely bonkers insane. Let me go back and find it. The voicemail said, hi, my name is Mrs. Jenkins. I did some research and I located you on the state bars being inactive. Okay. I am a lawyer who's allowed to practice in 2 states, but I'm inactive in both of those states because I don't practice law anymore. I'd like to know what it would take for you to become active. I have a civil matter in collections and bankruptcy matter. I would like to make contact with you. Happy Memorial Weekend. I'll call you Tuesday. Thank you now. My confusion is, and this is why I don't know if I'm like, is this some kind of, are people trying to, I was like, am I being scammed in some way? Because you have an active matter before the court and you went to a state bar. I don't know which bar. I said 2 states. I don't know which one we're talking about. I don't even know what state you're in. It's fine. You went to the state and looked up lawyers and you found one who's not actively practicing to ask them to become active to take your matter. And it's not someone I have ever known or seen before in my life. I don't know his name. I don't know this person. If you got my name because you're watching this channel, I want to tell you this is not how you do it. You find a lawyer who's active. You find a lawyer who practices what you do. I have never opened a bankruptcy textbook. I never learned anything about bankruptcy. I never practiced bankruptcy. I don't know anything about bankruptcy. So you called me to tell me to stop being inactive, become active, which what does it take? Money. It takes money to pay them and maybe some more like continuing education probably before I can be legal again, legit, a practicing lawyer again. To come out of retirement to take your case. And I'm like, is this someone's, is this a scam? And I was like, I don't understand how we got to here. You are not an active practicing attorney, but I'd like you to come and take my case. Y'all are saying scam, and I don't get the scam, but it feels scammy. Because I'm licensed in California and Ohio. Either of those states have thousands, hundreds of thousands, I'm sure, of active attorneys. Each of those states have thousands. If you want a Black woman attorney, each of those states has thousands. A lot. I think it's California. There are a lot of Black female attorneys in California. There's a whole Black bar association where you can, if that's what you're looking for. Why would you reach out to someone who's not practicing? And you know they're not practicing. Okay, so Michelle says that the scam is money coming out of my pocket eventually. I don't understand. I don't get the scam, but I was like, this feels... So Celeste says sounds more entitled than scam to her. I'm like, there are red flags, but I don't understand. Like, what would the scam? Why are you playing on my phone? And now I got to block you because why would you be calling me on Tuesday? We will not be speaking on the phone because we're not going to do anything that looks like we have any kind of legal relationship because we don't. You're not going to get me in trouble because I called her and she never showed up to court. Cheryl, nope, she's not gonna catch me. First of all, when I went to my voicemail, it says I have 395 unread messages. 395 unread messages. She's like, Stephanie never gets my text messages. I don't get nobody's voicemail. Nobody's voicemail. I don't get it. I don't. But I saw this one and I was like, what are you? It doesn't. It just it's not like a car warranty thing. So what is this? My phone doesn't even ring if I don't know the number. It goes straight to voicemail, which might be why I have so many voicemails. If I don't know your number, I don't. There's nothing. You don't have to talk about it. If it's not saved in my phone, I don't. So she don't get blocked. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jenkins. Not your name. But we're not gonna have any kind of conversation that looks like you created any kind of relationship, attorney-client relationship with me, because I don't do that. But I'm confused. So what I want y'all to do in the upcoming week is figure out what your goal is. Separate it from the labor that you think you have to do to get it. Separate your goal from your labor. I did not Google her name. I just said, let me make sure I block her and move on with my life, because you're not going to be in my Google history like, well, you Googled her and you saw. Nope. You can see this video. I said yes. It sounds crazy. I feel like I'm getting scammed, and I'm blocking her. And you might be a very, very nice lady, but what you need to do is go back to the Bar Association and find someone who's active and practices bankruptcy. Because if I took your bankruptcy matter, you would lose, because I don't know anything about it. You would definitely, I would have to become active and then learn about bankruptcy law. Lose. You gonna lose. You don't want that. Find you a lawyer who knows what they're doing. Plenty of them. We're gonna find our goals. We're gonna separate our goal from our labor. We're gonna think about who we want to be when we move abroad. Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? What do you want to do? Right? We're gonna get that going. We're gonna map out a plan. If we want to move abroad, we talked about this weekend. Friend, I think you're still here. You're going to think about where you want to go. You're thinking about when you want to leave. Where you want to go, when you want to leave. Right? Those are I've never made a rule in my life. My black isn't a roux black. But I know you need like some of them vegetables and maybe some stock and like some flour. It's the flour part, which is why I know I can't. Anyhow, like knowing what you want, where you want to go, and when you want to leave are the very basic ingredients of the roux that you need to make before you can make the rest of the dish. Does that make sense? I've never made a roux, but I know a little. You gotta get those together, mix it in the pot, in the pan. You gotta make your roux where you want to go and when you want to go there before you can build on the other stuff of your exit plan. All right, where you want to go, when you want to go, who you want to be, right? Who you want to be, how you want to feel. Those are all things that go into your mindset. Are we on board? And we're separating our goals from our labor. Two different things. My goal is for money to rain down on me. But that sounds like some kind of like supermarket showdown, right? It doesn't sound like work. We're together on that? All right. Y'all, I'm getting out of here. I think it's dinner time for me. Oh, I'm right next to a barbecue place, which I'm kind of, some of the best barbecue I ever had was in Paris. And so I don't want to say that I don't trust London barbecue, but I don't know. I don't know. Also, on the river outside, canal, whatever it is, they have this thing called barbecue boats. I'll post a photo of it over on Instagram today because I did it yesterday. And I don't quite understand what a barbecue boat is, but multiple things called barbecue boats out on the water. And they're like, from up here, it looks like what are those round floaty things called? It looks like it's a very small round boat with like a table in the middle. And they all say barbecue boat on the side of it. Are y'all familiar with barbecue boats? I have no idea what's going on. Like maybe they feed them barbecue on the boat, but they're not barbecuing on the water. You see how it was confusing? What's going on with this barbecue boat? All right, that was a very random. That last like 30 minutes was totally all over the place. But that's how I like it. We got to keep each other on our toes. Okay, friends. Until the next time, I will see you guys. Where will I be? Next week? I think I'll be in Jamaica. Okay, so I don't know if I'm coming live to you guys next time because I don't know. I'm going to Jamaica for a wedding and I have no idea when the wedding is. So maybe I'll be here next Sunday, maybe I won't. But I'll tell you in advance. Put a little post up. I'll let you guys know. Plan on being here with me plan on being here with me. I'll be ahead of East Coast time, so it'll be like maybe like 10 a.m. my time, and no one's having a wedding at 10 a.m. I'll be here next week. I'll be here. I'll see you guys. All right. See you next week. Bye. Oh, yeah, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. All those important things that a real YouTuber would tell you. Ciao.